In this video, we are going to continue with the details of process and process related and process management related theories of operating system. So in the previous video, I discussed about the various process states. তো এই প্রসেস স্টেটসগুলো প্রসেসের লাইফ টাইমে প্রসেস এইসব স্টেটের মধ্যে দিয়ে যায়। তো লেটস কন্টিনিউ ফ্রম দ্যাট থিওরি। So next, our target is to understand the process scheduling part. So the aim of process scheduling is to maximize the CPU use, and this is the multi-programming environment. So multiple processes will run in a computer system. So our aim is to maximize the CPU by running maximum number of processes. So that's why process scheduling is very important aspect of process management in operating system. তো এখানে আমরা দেখতে পাচ্ছি যে maximize CPU usage, quickly switch process onto CPU for time sharing, and process scheduler is a thing that selects among available processes for next execution on the CPU. So we have to relate this theory with this particular diagram, that is the process state. So the process changes from one state to another state, like from new to ready, and ready to running, running to waiting, and so on. So ওখানে যে টার্মটা মেনশন করা আছে যে প্রসেস শিডিউলার, এই শিডিউলার যে প্রসেস শিডিউলার ইজ এ পার্ট অফ অপারেটিং সিস্টেম। তো এই শিডিউলার হচ্ছে রেসপন্সিবল একটা প্রসেসকে কোনো একটা স্টেট থেকে অন্য স্টেটে নিয়ে যাওয়ার জন্য। এটাকেই বলে প্রসেস শিডিউলিং বা প্রসেসকে শিডিউল করা। তো শিডিউলিং মেন এম কি শিডিউলিংয়ের, একে রানিং স্টেটে আনা, প্রসেসকে রান করানো, যাতে সিপিইউ ইউটিলাইজেশন ম্যাক্সিমাইজড হয়। তো এখানে আবার চলে আসি। তো এই হচ্ছে সেটা হচ্ছে প্রসেস শিডিউলার, প্রসেসকে শিডিউল করে। তো এখানে যে প্রসেস স্টেটসগুলো মেনশন করা হয়েছে, তো এক একটা স্টেটে মাল্টিপল প্রসেসেস থাকতে পারে। যে নিউ স্টেটে রানিং স্টেটে মাল্টিপল প্রসেস রয়েছে হয়তো, বা রেডি কিউতে রেডি স্টেটে মাল্টিপল প্রসেস রয়েছে, ওয়েটিং স্টেটে মাল্টিপল প্রসেস রয়েছে। তো দিস সেট আপ or the data structure that is used is called the queue. The queue data structure is used to accommodate those processes in a particular state. Let's say we have a pool of or a set of processes who are waiting for IO operations. So the processes will maintain a queue for the IO operation to complete. So এই যে বিভিন্ন রকম কিউ সেগুলো মেনটেন করা হয় সিস্টেমের মধ্যে। তো জব কিউ কি বলছে, সেট অফ অল প্রসেসেস ইন দ্য সিস্টেম, অল প্রসেসেস। প্রোগ্রাম হ্যাজ বিকাম আ প্রসেস অ্যাক্টিভ এন্টিটি। তো সো দিস কিউ ইজ কল্ড দ্য জব কিউ, সেট অফ অল প্রসেসেস। নেক্সট ওয়ান ইজ রেডি কিউ। তো রেডি কিউ কি, যে রেডি সেট অফ অল প্রসেসেস রিসাইডিং ইন মেন মেমোরি, দ্যাট ইজ রেডি টু বি এক্সিকিউটেড, দ্যাট ইজ দিস ওয়ান। দিস ইজ দ্য রেডি কিউ। This is the ready queue, okay, and this is the running state, and every job, every process is called every processes are kept in a job queue. So this is the ready queue. The ready state means the processes are kept in a particular queue, that is called the ready queue. These processes are ready to be executed. Waiting to execute, that is waiting to get allocated to the CPU. Then comes the device queue, set of processes waiting for an IO device or IO operation to complete. Okay, so you can already relate, I think, with the particular queue or the particular state, that is the waiting state. So this queue is called the waiting queue. So we need some IO operation to finish, then the process migrate to the another queue from waiting to ready queue. So this queue of processes is called the waiting queue. Okay, so these are several different queues that are used to retain process in a system, and the queues are maintained by the operating system itself, and the scheduler schedules the processes from one queue to another queue, or from new state to running state, or so on. Okay, so these are the basic terms behind process scheduling. So there are several different process scheduling algorithms that are being used in computer system. So we'll learn these algorithms later. So let's dig into more into the process itself. And the processes migrate among these various queues. As I said, এই যে বিভিন্ন states রয়েছে, one process can go from one state to another state and so on. So okay, so these are the different process queues, and scheduler works with these queues in operating system. Though this scheduler is a different process. Okay, so this scheduler is also maintained by operating system itself. So it is the job of the scheduler to migrate the process or to shift the process from one queue to another queue. Let's look at the diagram. This is a basic example of those queues. Let's say the first one is the ready queue. So okay, this kind of data structures can be used or is being used in operating system. There are various different types of data structures, as you can see. So let's say this is the ready queue. So these processes are denoted by their respective PCBs. That is, this is the PCB of process P7. Now this one is the PCB of process 2, and the queue header is maintained. Okay, so the queue header points to the next node, and this node points to another node, and that's how the queue is maintained. Though as you can see, the queue is being maintained through a dynamic memory allocation system. It resembles the linked list structure. There is a tail section in the queue header. The tails directly points to the last node of that particular queue. So that's how a queue is maintained, and this is for particularly for the ready queue. And as you can see, these are IO queues. Okay, so let's say magazine or tape. This signifies some IO device like tape drive or something. Okay, this is the disk drive. So these three processes are waiting for the disk operation. That means they are waiting to access the disk. So process 3, process 14 and process 6, they are all in the IO queue. That is this one, the device queue or IO queue. Okay, so that's how process queues are maintained. So these are maintained using dynamic memory allocation kind of data structure. So terminal is another process. So terminal, suppose a process is waiting to get access to the terminal, so that's how it can wait. So this is the only process that is waiting for the terminal. So head and tail are pointing to a single node, that is the PCB of that particular process, that is process 5. So that's how data structures are used in operating system, and this particular setup is used in maintaining the process or various process queues. So this is another point where you can see the significance of various data structures, how the data structures are applied in operating system structure. Okay, so what we have covered right now, process scheduling and the components of process scheduling, that is the various queues of process and the data structures related to those processes. And there is another representation. This is called the queuing diagram. So this is a different kinds of representation. This is not a data structure. This signifies the flow of process or the migration of process from one queue to another queue. Let's say this is the CPU. Okay, the circular one is the CPU, as you can see. So ekhane ready queue royeche. These processes are ready to be executed. So all those ready to be executed processes will be residing in that ready queue. So every other process that are not ready to be executed will be waiting over here, and these processes will eventually come to the ready queue. Let's look at those process state diagram. So from to run a process, the process has to be in the ready queue. So ready queue is the second the former state of the CPU allocation. So the process has to be in the ready queue. So all other processes are waiting for something to happen. Let's say this queue is the IO queue. they are waiting for the IO request to complete, and there are some processes who are ready to be executed, but their time slice has expired, so those processes are shifted to another queue, and they are doing some system call related operation like calling a fork operation or creating a child, and this queue of processes, they are waiting for some interrupt, and after those operations will be completed, like the child executes or interrupt acknowledgement are done, then only they will be allocated to this ready queue. So this is the flow, this is how it works. So this is called queuing diagram. It represents the queues, resources and flows. Okay, so once the process is in a ready queue, then it will be executed by CPU, and if the process is complete, then it will be terminated. So this arrow signifies the termination or completion of the particular process, and if the process is not complete yet, it will be shifted to one of these queues like IO queues or some other waiting queues or something like that. The time slice expired is basically a waiting queue, and these things also some kind of waiting queue, and this is the IO queue. Time slice expired, actually the ready queue. So this is a kind of ready queue when a process is switched out from that running state. That queue is the one. This is the one. Process can be switched out from the running state once the time slice is expired. So these are the different types of queue, representations of queue, and the flow of process, and we can say the migration of process from one queue to another queue. So this kind of diagram is called queuing diagram. Now let's look at the schedulers. So what are the schedulers? So mainly there are two different kind of scheduler, and another kind of scheduler is there also. So but the main two schedulers are short-term scheduler and long-term scheduler. So what is a scheduler? As we have mentioned, as we have seen, the process scheduler selects among available processes. So let's define all these things. The short-term scheduler selects which process should be executed next and allocates the CPU. Sometimes the only scheduler in a system. So basically, short-term scheduler is one which migrates a process from a ready state to running state. This is short-term duration. This is short duration. This is the short-term scheduler selects process from the ready queue itself. Okay, so that is the job of the short-term scheduler. So let's look at those terms. Select which process should be executed next and allocates the CPU. So from that queue, a short-term scheduler migrates a process to the running state, that is to the CPU, submits to the CPU. And sometimes the only scheduler in a system, and the short-term scheduler is invoked frequently, so it should be fast, it should act very fast. And the long-term scheduler selects which process should be brought into the ready queue. Long-term scheduler is invoked infrequently. So this is where long-term scheduler works, that is the waiting queue. Okay, the long term, that from new to waiting, from running to waiting and all. This is the job of the long-term scheduler. So it is invoked infrequently as compared to the short-term scheduler. The role of the long-term scheduler is to select which process should be brought into the ready queue. So these are two main different kinds of scheduler, and the degree of multiprogramming, that is the efficiency of multiprogramming, that also we can say is mainly dependent on the performance of the long-term scheduler. Okay, how? Because the long-term scheduler is one which controls the migration of the process from for a various kinds of states, like from new to ready, and this ready to running will be handled by the short-term scheduler, and from running to waiting. Okay, then shifting that thing from waiting to ready. These kinds of stuffs are mainly handled by the long-term scheduler. So if the long-term scheduler is efficient enough, the degree of multiprogramming will increase. That means the process allotted or the CPU use or CPU accessed by the various process will be maximized. So that is our aim, and that is the main aim behind the multiprogramming thing. So long-term scheduler controls the degree of multiprogramming. And there is another thing, processes can be described as either IO bound process and CPU bound process. So there will be different kinds of processes. Let us look at this picture or this data structure kind of diagram. So there will be process that will require CPU time, that is the processing time, for most of its lifetime. What does that mean? That particular process will require CPU for most of the time. It will not require IO event, or the requirement of IO event will be negligible. So what does that mean? A new process will be created, and in most of its lifetime it will be using the CPU only. It will not require, or there will be negligible requirement of IO event. Okay, so that's the one kind of process. And the another kind is the most in its lifetime, the most of the time it will be executing or working with IO devices or input output things, but less with CPU allocation and processing with the CPU and that kind of stuff. So these are two classifications. So the first one is called the CPU bound process. It spends more time doing the computations, few very long CPU bursts. I'm coming to the burst term a bit later. So most of the time doing computation, that means it requires the CPU allocation or CPU processing most of the time. And the another one is the IO bound process. This term is important, the bound, CPU bound and IO bound. Most of the work, or most of the time it will work with the CPU, and in this case most of the time it will work with the input output devices. So that's how these processes can be classified in this segment, or in terms of scheduler segment. So IO bound, CPU bound is not directly part of scheduler, but it is part of the concept as a whole. Okay, so IO bound is not part of long term scheduler or short term scheduler, not as such. This is a part of the whole concept as a whole. So these are called IO bound process, CPU bound process. In this diagram, this process can be termed as IO bound process. These processes, that is, they are doing a fairly good amount of IO work, and these processes can be termed as CPU bound process, as they are in a ready queue already. They are not doing anything related to IO input output. So these processes can be termed as those CPU bound processes. I hope this is clear. So there is another thing called medium term scheduler. It has been added in the theoretical part of computer science, and this has also been implemented. This is used in swapping. Swapping you will be studying in memory management part. So in swap in or swap out operation, memory related operation, medium term schedulers are used. So there are some case studies of multitasking. Okay, so in a mobile system there are examples of iOS. You might want to study that for some additional case study related knowledge and all. Now there is another important concept. This is the context switch. So what is context switch? When CPU switches to another process, the system must save the state of the old process and load the saved state for the new process via a context switch. So what is context of a switch? The content of the PCB, the process control block, which I was discussing in the earlier video. So where is it? The content of the PCB, this is the actually the context of the process, a process related data. Okay, information associated with each process, that is the context of the process. If a process wants, if the CPU switches from one process to another process, then the CPU has to save the particular state of those processes and switch to the another process, due to which it loads the context of that particular process, the new one. So that is called the context switch. Switching, it is generally it is actually the switching between the processes, that is called the context switch. And what is the context? The context is the process related data. So if the process keeps switching between various processes, there will be overhead. Switching time is overhead. The system does no useful work while switching. Clear enough? So the process execution time is not the only factor to calculate the process completion or the set of completion of set of process. There will be context switch time, and that time is quite fair enough. This is not negligible at all. Okay. So time dependent on hardware support, obviously there will be issues of hardware, there will be bottlenecks. So this is how context switch works. Some hardware provides multiple sets of register per CPU, multiple context loaded at once. If there is a support for from the processor or from the hardware side of thing, then this context switch will be more efficient. If there is limitations in hardware, if there is less number of registers available, that in that case many processes will be using the same set of registers or the same set of hardwares. So that's how context switch will create more bottleneck in the system. Okay, so better the hardware or more the hardware support, the context switch will be better. Now let's look at the next topic, that is operations on process. So what kind of operations can a user do with some processes? These are the very basic steps, but the theory, there is something to learn, some technology to learn. That is the basic operations on a process is process creation and process termination and so on. And we need to learn the creation methods of process and also the termination of process. And the running part or the running portion, the running section of the process will be discussed in CPU scheduling portion, because the running of a process or the execution of a process is actually the execution of process by the CPU. So that will be discussed in CPU scheduling part. So let's look at the process creation thing. So I have shown you a demonstration of fork system call. So that's how process is being created. Classically process is created using some system call from a parent process, and parent process creates children process, in which in turn create other process, forming a tree of processes. So there will be a tree like structure, and as you know in tree data structure there are parent, child, grandparent, okay, descendant, this kind of relations. So there will be similar kind of relations between a process tree. So generally process identified and managed via process identifier, that is PID. As you already know, PID can be seen using some system calls or using some system programs. Okay, resource sharing options, and not only system calls, process ID can be seen through basic API or commands also in Linux systems. And resource sharing options, parent and child share all resources, but this is initially, not every time. Initially parent and child will be sharing same resources. Child share subset of parents resources, and parent and child share no resources. So these are the sharing options. So initially this thing will be there, all resources will be shared by a parent and a child process. And what are the execution option? Parent and child execute concurrently. They might do coexist, they might execute concurrently, or most of the time the children or the child nodes in a process tree, that that nodes mainly works, or that processes mainly work throughout the system, and once the children terminate, the parent also terminates in normal scenario, not every time, in normal scenario. So process termination in general case is done from the leaf node of the process tree. Okay, first the children terminates and then their parents and so on. So the parent child or the root, if we can say this, the root node or the root of all processes terminate the last. They wait for their children to terminate. So that's how processes are created. So there are some examples of process creation. This is the snapshot of process tree in Linux. So in it is the first process, that is the PID 1, and these are a particular snapshot of a system or a section of a process tree. This is not all. There are many children process after this login and this one and SSHD and all. So we generally work in a bash or a shell or a user interface. The user interface is a part of the login process. That is the particular process ID. Let me clarify, this process ID. These process IDs are not fixed. That is 8415. It can vary. It can vary from system to system. But this one, the init, that is PID 1, this is fixed, and PID 2 is fixed, and SSHD this kind of fix. There is another process. This is PID 0, that is called SCHED. This is the swapping process that has not been mentioned in this diagram. Probably I will discuss the process creation and process tree in practical classes. So let's take that as an example only. So this is the root process with PID 0. Then if we log into system, that login process, that this thing has another PID, and if we open a terminal after login in, the terminal works under terminal, that is the bash, it works under the login process. So there are several different processes also. So this is the process tree. So every process in Linux system is being created from a parent process, okay, and so on. So that's how a tree is formed. This is the sample of process tree. This is the creation of process, normal creation of process. So this is another example using system call. In this slide they have shown the creation of processes using system calls. So address space, the child duplicate of a parent. So initially what happens is, child becomes an equal process to the parent itself. So through fork system call, a child process will be created. Now let's look at that a particular diagram. The parent process waits until the child process exits. So if the child process finishes its execution, then only the parent process also resumes to its further task, or it may get terminated also. So this is the role of the fork. Now what is exec? Exec system call is used after a fork to replace the process memory space with a new program. Now probably you must be wondering, if all processes are copy of the parent process, then how does it work? How does a child process can do different kind of stuff, or perform different kinds of tasks? The access is a kind of system call that allots us different memory space, or provides a process with different resources. Okay, that's how a child process can act differently. So through system program we can check out this stuff. We can enable a child process to do a separate task as compared to its parent. So that's how it's worked. Not only exec, there are system calls like XLP, execv. Okay, so this system calls enable child process to execute its own task. So this is a normal creation of process. Okay, So through fork system call, there are several upgraded versions of fork. So this is the old school classic fork. Fork has been updated. So probably we'll be demonstrating this stuff in system programming lab. So once exit is a system call, it is related to the process termination. Once the child process executes the exit part, that is the child process terminates, then the parent process will stop waiting and it will resume with its next tasks. So there is an example. I have shown this particular example in practical class. So right now I am skipping this. This is the example for a Linux system, and this one is for the Windows system. And now the process termination. So what is process termination? This is the final state in process diagram or process state diagram. So to terminate, a process must execute the exit system call, and if it exits, it returns the exit status to its parent. That's how parents understand that the child process has terminated. So processes resources are deallocated by the operating system. Fair enough. Parent may terminate the execution of children process using the abort system call. Now this is the abnormal termination. If a process is terminated abnormally or abruptly, then the abort system call is called by the parent process. So it can be done in scenarios like this. A child has exited the allocated resource. Okay, task assigned to child is no longer required. The parent is exiting. Now look at this, the parent is exiting and the operating system doesn't allow a child to continue if its parents terminates. So in these scenarios, abort system calls may come into action and terminate those child process even before their own exit call has been executed. So these are the basics of process termination. And some operating system do not allow child to exist if its parent has terminated, but some operating systems do allow the alternate one. Okay, so the fair termination is called the cascading termination. All children, grandchildren, etc. are terminated, that then the parent process will terminate. After the termination of grandchildren and children, then the actual root, that is the parent process, will terminate. The termination is initiated by the operating system. Obviously the parent process may wait for the termination of child process by using the wait system call. So through wait system call, a parent process can wait for a particular child. Let's say a parent process has created 3 or 4 children process under them. So a parent can individually wait for each and every process. Through the wait status or wait code, the parent can understand which process has executed, which child process has executed its exit status. That's how parent process can keep a track of the children processes that are being terminated. Okay, so this will be a better demonstration can be done in the practical lab itself. So for the time being, let's try to understand the theory. So if no parent waiting, the process is zombie process. So and the parent terminated without invoking wait, the process is orphan process. So orphan process means the parent process has been terminated, but the child process is still there in the system. So in that case, the child process will be called orphan process. Now zombie process is different. Zombie process means the process is not the parent process, the main process is not waiting, and actually the process has been terminated, but there is an entry of the process in the system. Now in this scenario, the particular process is called a zombie process. The process has been terminated, but there is an information that the process ID or the process some of the context of the particular process is still there in the system. In that case, zombie process are created. processes are created. That particular process is called the zombie process. And this section, this is very clear, that is the orphan process. That parent process has been terminated, but the child process are still there in the system. So child processes will be termed as orphan process. Through generally in modern operating system, these zombie process or orphan processes are cleaned up by operating system by default through memory cleanup mechanisms built into the operating system. But through system programs, we can create zombie process and orphan process manually through system programs using system calls. Okay, so these are the process terminations. So in this study material, you can find several different examples of parent and child process and so on. And the next topic in this section will be inter-process communication, and it will be discussed in next class.